On the end of that, it'd be scary.
Yeah. So there you go. You ready? Sound good?
Yeah.
You hear me okay?
I can.
All right, perfect. Careful about bumping the table and stuff.
Yes.
You ready?
Tie my hands together. Then I won't be able to talk.
Right.
Now for something special. The unit is self-contained with its own saddler, farrier, wheelwright and so on. It's a rigorous training dished out who know all there is to know about horses, and it brings results.
We take you behind the scenes now to show just some of the interesting aspects of this training.
Welcome to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein, the best podcast to create sounder horses from the ground up. Mike Stein is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF1 accreditation. On this week's episode, continuing stories of Dusty, our very own horse here, and get ready for spring or fall grasses and a healthy weight for horses. And all this and much, much more will be discussed here on Equine Dynamics. And over my far right-hand side is Mike Stein. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Travis?
Doing all right. Anything exciting happened in the last week or so?
Well, I got out of bed this morning. I could move.
Well,
that's pretty exciting.
Well, I just want to let you know, today's my wife's birthday.
Well, happy birthday.
And she's taking the day off, well, that being President's Day and all that. So she's taking the day off. She's met a nice group of people where she's boarding the horse now. They had a little get-together party yesterday. Not for her, for someone else there. And she's like, you know what? I'm starting to enjoy getting out there and seeing all these people and getting back in the horse community. You know, even though she says horse people are weird, and I go, yeah, it's a good thing, babe. I'm the one that's keeping you level as far as horses and stuff. But for the most part, because, you know, she works from home, I work from home. The only people she sees, Mike, is myself, you, her trainer, and then that's it. Just us three guys. And maybe an occasional customer that'll come over and buy our eggs because we do have chickens and stuff.
Right.
So she's getting used to going out there and seeing all her friends and kind of networking out there. And she's saying, the horse people aren't that crazy over there. So that's good for her. What else have you got going on here lately? That have you worked on anything exciting? Any problem horses out there that you've come across?
Well, it's spring, so things seem to be flaring up, and horses they're acting like it's spring. Let's say that. When
you say acting like it's spring, why are they getting hot and heavy too?
Little friskier, little more excited about life.
Now, is there a mating season for horses? I mean, I know because they have cycles. The female horses have cycles just like humans do or any other animal that's not fixed or anything. Is this the time of year that you start seeing more breeding of horses?
Well, it depends. It depends on what they're breeding, but I think that horses do come into stronger heats and when spring weather starts coming up.
All right. And so, and with more babies that are coming out, that's more footwork and stuff that you need to start addressing now.
Well, it's not that so much. You're talking about lost shoes earlier.
Well, not
when they're clouded around. I see out in the field. I see more of that, and it seems like that you see more horses out clowning around, a few more injuries from that sort of deal. But I've gotten a number more vet calls that I'm working on and all that sort. So
now we're going to talk about seeding the pastures, and I just recently seeded our pasture here. We have our property sits on. The house itself sits on about 2.5 acres, and the rest of the property is all horse pastures and the barn and everything. So I've got a little breakdown of what we got, and we'll dive into that here in the show as far as what grass seed I put down and how to keep control of the horse's weight this time of year, whether it fluctuates up and down. Fluctuating up and down is good, right?
Well, I think that people do not like to see the horse's weight fluctuate, but when you're getting ready to go into new grazing, sometimes it's not bad for their weight to back off some. It's kind of like us doing an all-you-can-eat buffet. If we keep doing that, you know what happens.
I fall asleep on the way home. All right, guys, stick around. We got a big show to get into. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. Stick around. He'll be right back. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. Don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video as well, and you can see all the stuff, myself waving to Mike, Mike waving to me here in the studio. We have a matching video. All you do is go to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein on YouTube, and you can see all the videos. Mike has posted a bunch of videos, a bunch of articles up there as far as horse care, hoof care, and creating sounder horses. And you can find him on Facebook as well under the same title, Mike Stein, Equine Dynamics. And if you have any questions for the show, for Mike himself, the way you contact him is go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page, actually, I said at the bottom of the page before, it's at the top of the page, says contacts. Fill out that little form and make sure in the subject line you put podcast so Mike can decipher between all his other emails that he's getting. And we will answer your question about your horse. Any topics you have on your horse, Mike can answer them as well. And over to my far hand side is Mike Stein.
Hello, Travis.
How are you? Now, last week we were talking about Dusty, the horse, and give us a little background before we actually dive into the continuation of this story.
Well, this is a horse that goes back to before I ever started shoeing. And we talked about the problem with the saddle as the mare grew up and the reaction, and she was shaking the saddle back and all that. Of course, there was she's just behaving badly. But, over time, we talked about the Navicular Syndrome and what all happened there. Well, over time, the mare started coming up a little off in the front end, and, sure enough, we have some navicular problems. Quarter horse mare, laying on the front end too much, with the saddle trap in the shoulders, created her laid on the front end too much. As far as her developing like you would love for your quarter horse to be, she was always a little weak in the hindquarters, and she's just that way. But on the other end, now looking back, as far as what we were doing with attack, and creating a situation where the shoulders did not move, creating a situation where the hind end did not come under it. At that point, I didn't understand. But then we started dealing with problems down the road because of the issues that we had ended up causing, because we thought the saddle fit, and then as we learn things, and this is part of the big learning curve we all go through, we started looking back at what we had done with our horses, and it's like, oh, because I look at pictures of horses I have owned in past history, and I think, boy, what I look at then, and I pull that picture out and look at it, it's like, uh-oh. Learning what I've done about as far as working with horses and signs that they're telling us that something's going on before it happens. And I look back at those horses, I'm like, boy, that horse is really put together and moving good, strong, and all this kind of stuff. And I pick up the picture from 30, 40 years ago. It's like, oh, crap. I was doing the exact same thing. We have the exact same thing from that picture is what I'm looking at on people's horses right now when I'm deciding how to work with them, and doing all the same stuff that, boy, I was ignorant.
Well, education comes through time. So what's the latest update as far as what you're doing with the horse now?
Well, that mare is gone, but, she lived with us to 34 years old, mm-hmm. and she's passed on. But, we ended up with the navicular problems. It was early on when this happened. I had just started shoeing, and so the option was to go put an egg bar with a rocker toe on it, which we had some in here the other day. And, of course, took her somewhere. Somebody else shoed the horse, because I was like, man, I've never messed with that in my life. Don't even know what it is. At that point, I had not done any forge work. So for me to do that, you had to beat the snot out of a shoe cold. And but, somebody showed me how to do it. And the way I would prep a foot now is not anything like I did what I thought then, because that's been a constant evolvement, but there was so much that if we could have gone back a few years, gone to she was younger, on training, on tack, on a lot of things, that could have been a totally different situation real early. And that's one thing I really want to get through to horse owners is paying attention to what is really going on, learning to look at a horse, learning how to feel it, learning how to do that. Because, in my working with Tony Gonzalez and Ray and those guys, Ray Morris, my vision of a horse has changed so much over the years, and it has made a huge difference in my approach on working with horses in general. So there again, I can look back, and if we had known at this point, did she have to come up with a navicular issue? Now, yes, she was a breed that's more prone to it. she had a little bit of a short upright pastern. But if the shoulder had been moving freely and opened up, we wouldn't have had the impact level. Since we had tied it into place with the saddle, because, oh my God, the saddle slipped back, and cranked it down and pulled the girth too far forward, we limited the movement of the shoulder, created a big impact. Well, she doesn't move quite right. Well, I guess that's just the way she is.
My wife just had the saddle fitter come out this past week. She went out to the barn, and the saddle fitter said, "Oh my God, your horse has changed so much in the last 3-4 months since the last time she was out there." So she was adjusting the saddle for the horse and, trying to make it fit. And she was like so impressed of how much that horse has changed and how much she had to reflock and do all the stuff to make that saddle fit on the horse. And Amy got on it and rode, and she was like going, it's like $1,000,000. It's like wearing a brand new pair of shoes.
So here's the next question. Was it changed to the positive or the negative?
What do you mean change to the positive or negative? Where the horse changed?
With the change.
It was
getting bigger and stronger,
yes.
Or was the horse atrophying away?
Yes, I understand the question now. Yes, to a positive stance. She could see more muscle definition. She could see the change of, and I don't know the actual terminology, Mike, I'm sorry, but she could see where, okay, the horse is raised up here and this muscle is moved here, and she would have to change, of course, the saddle to accommodate the strength.
We're starting to build some back muscle.
Correct.
We're starting to fill in the hollows behind the withers.
Yes. That stuff there.
Yeah, that stuff there. And, so many times, people say, the horse's withers are becoming more prominent. It's not necessarily that they're becoming more prominent. It's the muscle around them is atrophying away. So then you fill that in because, oh, my God, it's going away. And then you start trapping the horse in that position. We work so hard at getting them up to round to move correctly. And then you see horses where it has gone away. So you fit to that, fit to that, fit to that. Well, the more you fit to the inverted back, the more you keep the inverted back inverted. So
here's a question for you. How often, if any, should a horse saddle be adjusted or flocked or looked at? Now, shoes you do every 4 to 6 weeks because the horses are always changing you're trying to fix whatever the movement's going on. How often should you do that for a horse saddle based on what we were talking about with Dusty the horse and stuff?
Well, I think you probably need to talk to the saddle fitter and see when their mortgage is due.
That's the way I feel all the time. Yeah, but we got a payment due.
The flocking becomes compressed. There are ways you can get in there and fluff out the flocking. I don't think that's done very often. Depends on the use of the horse.
So my wife rides about three times a week for our lessons. Not 4-hour lessons, for an hour lesson each. Mm-hmm. And then that's it. I mean, but it's and she rides dressage. And so I'm thinking, is it every 6 months? Is it every 3 months? Is there a rule of thumb?
One of the best ways I know is, and like with your navicular horses in particular, the way I tell how good they're doing if we haven't shot x-rays is literally running my hand down the lower back and see how the back is reacting. And owners can learn to feel that. I mean, when Ray and myself were working, teaching people about massage, a lot of it's just learning to feel your horse, because you're going to see some negative changes starting to show up. It's like, ooh, we need to do something. Then maybe we need to get the saddle fitter in.
Now, when you say negative things happening,
we're going to start seeing some atrophy. We're going to start finding some hard, tight spots in the muscling. Okay. We're going to see the movement pattern start to shorten. And you can see that, you can feel it, it's kind of, and the horse is screaming at you, something needs to be done.
So feel the horse every day or every time that you're out there, every time you're going to ride it, and just notice the changes.
With a little coaching, owners can start to see we've got some things going on here, and then we address it, and then we move back to the positive. And because there's way too many horses that are retired because of unsoundness, and we should be retiring them happy because of old age.
When's your next clinic that you got coming up? You got a clinic coming up here soon?
We do have something. I don't have any exact dates. There's going to be a Buckeye event in Monroe at the Ag Center, it looks like. And I've been speaking with some people. I've been going back and forth with Equine. I had a couple dates in Aiken, but because of the COVID deal, that got shut down.
Yeah, I know it shut a lot of things down for us. So that'll be interesting. And the closer we get to that date, the more information we'll have for you. All right, guys, stick around. I just got done seeding my lawn. I want to make sure that I did it correctly, and Mike Stein's going to tell me whether I did or not. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. He'll be right back. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein, the official farrier of the 2018 World Equestrian Games. And for more information on him, make sure you go over to equinedynamics.com. If you have a question for us, make sure you fill out the little contact section at the top of the page. Send your questions into Mike. Make sure you put podcast in the subject line so he can answer that and we can get it on the very next podcast. And don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video. Go over to YouTube, search for Mike Stein Equine Dynamics, and also on Facebook as well. And over to my far right hand side is Mike Stein. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Now, I went and I bought one of those big medieval-looking rollers with all the spikes and stuff that I can pull behind my side-by-side to aerate my lawn. Now, I've got my house sits on about 2.5 acres, and the rest of the whole property is all pastures. So I put Kentucky 31 grass seed. I reseeded it, or what they call overseed.
Overseed,
yeah, because I did it in early fall, and I started to do the pasture. Now, the pasture, I do let me read this here. I have a tall fescue mix. A fawn tall fescue, a select tall fescue, other crop seeds, inert matter, which is basically just wood chips or wood shavings, and weed seed. And this bag, this 50-pound bag right here, costs about $200 that I got. I don't know if you want to look at that or not. But I reseeded the pasture in hopes and preparation for this coming spring, because I guess, is it good to do grass and hay? Because we do a Timothy alfalfa hay, like a compressed hay that we put in the stall. One horse gets about 1.5 flecks each, and then we turn them out into the pastures. I know we've got two little ponies here. Sometimes they get fat, sometimes they get skinny. Sometimes they get fat, sometimes they get skinny. What am I looking for as far as seeding my lawn, getting the pasture ready, and the hay to grass? Is there a hay to grass ratio as far as what they should be on and off at the same time?
Well,
I know I threw a lot at you there. Sorry.
You did. I would, as the grasses come in, you need to cut back on some groceries, because you need to look at overall caloric intake. The other thing is, in this part of the country, the colder weather grasses for us are starting to. In other parts of the world, like my friends down south in New Zealand, their fall grasses are coming in. People don't think about it, but in this part of the country, we think about laminitis in the spring, right?
Yes.
Because that's when horses founder. Guess what? I have more calls in the fall here.
How come?
Because people aren't thinking about it, because that's a springtime thing. But, horses in the wild, their weight fluctuates. They eat through the winter. Things get hard. They drop weight. Grass comes in, they eat. And we have a real thing about our horse losing weight. Now, most of us, at a certain point in life, we're trying to figure out how to lose weight.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I wouldn't say anything about you where anybody could tell it, but it's that thing of trying to outrun time and gravity.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start putting them onto new feed, we need to think about the other feeds we're putting in them, and we need to back off. And I don't have any problem with a horse dropping a little weight before they're going into new grazing, because I'm on the receiving end of, my horse it can't walk. We got a pulse. We got problems. What happened? But she's fat and beautiful. And, horses love to eat. That's like this old friend of mine said, you look at somebody and say, well, they got great pull-up muscles, but not good push-back muscles. They can't push back from the table. Horse ain't going to push back from the table. They're just going to eat. And, there are probably more horses out there than people would admit to that may have some underlying metabolic stuff, especially as they age, get a little older. And when we buy horses 8 years old, 10 years later, and our mind is still 8 years old. But there again, be proactive instead of reactive. Also, when you're working on your paddocks, going in, some of the hay crops and all, they will hit with nitrogen. Some of the field crops, I know that the winter wheat, they have just hit with nitrogen behind the house. But hitting your pastures with nitrogen can be not good on your horses at all.
Why is that?
Well, there again, laminitis and feet problems.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, I was talking to one of the ag agents that we have here in Union County, or did have in Union County, and he said for horse pastures, lime. He said don't fertilize, don't anything. If you put something on, lime it.
Just lime.
Just lime.
I can do that.
And
now I put this past rotation that I did. I actually, are you familiar with Malargonite?
not a clue.
Malargonite is all natural, 100% organic fertilizer. It actually, if you read the back of it, it comes from the sewage system from Wisconsin. So it's it's dried human waste from Wisconsin, made into granule pellet form, and it does have somewhat. I think it's 4% iron in it, and I think that nitrogen's a little high. It might be around a 13 or a 14, 12-0 or something like that.
Right, and they use chicken litter on the fields behind my house.
Okay, so it's almost the same thing.
Yeah,
Just that this
but they're not grazing horses on that.
So we put the nitrogen or the Malargonite down, and my question is, what is the actual caloric intake? For example, they say humans should have anywhere from 2,000 to 2,400, depending on your height and everything, calories per day to maintain a weight. Is there a rule of thumb as far as caloric intake for horses, or is it a?
Well, there are some rules out there. I do not have them in front of me, but you can look all this up, and learning to pay attention to weight tapes. If you can't afford a weight tape, which is extremely cheap, and you can get them pretty much into your feed dealers.
Mm-hmm.
Any horse, learning how to use a weight tape, monitor their weight, and look at old pictures of the horse, because we get used to seeing the horse every day, and you think, oh, he looks good. We can't see a rib anywhere. He's at a good weight. Well, if we're at that weight, what kind of shape are we in?
I know. I looked at pictures I was going through some pictures the other day of just me even 6 years ago. I'm like, back then I thought I was fat, and I was skinnier then than I was now.
Right. And, I could still wear the same pants I wore in high school. I just can't get them much past my knees.
Right. Exactly. Now, one of our horses, you were talking about having actual personal issues. One of our miniature horses out there has a thyroid problem.
Right.
So she's gotten, with a thyroid problem, she puts on a lot of weight, and she was getting kind of chunky. She looked like a big whiskey barrel walking around the property. And so we've changed her and got her some kind of stuff for her thyroid to kind of bring her back down and
right.
and all that. What other stuff should we be looking for as far as that?
Horses probably should be treated like your thyroid horse, and in general, we should probably, especially as they age, start thinking more like how should you eat as a human to keep from becoming diabetic, and pay attention to your sugars, pay attention to your overall caloric intake, and it is overall caloric intake. So when the grasses come in and they're getting more calories off the grasses, if you keep your hay and your grain at the same level, and if horses are working and all of a sudden they're starting to go out of work, there has been problems with horses that have been hard work that have gotten injured and gone off work. Well, this is what we feed them. And then boom, in a few weeks, it's like, ooh, our feet are flaring up. Because, when they're burning 10,000 calories a day or whatever they're burning, and they're eating that fine, all of a sudden they go out of work and we didn't start drawing their feed back. And there's a ratio on how much you can draw back per week on your grain or whatever you're feeding them
without starving them.
Right. And that all can be looked up online. We got access to all kinds of stuff these days. That was a big thing when I worked for Dick Mansman, who his clinic when he was operating, and he still consults, but it was purely built around podiatry. And his thing was overall caloric intake. He made people weigh hay, because you don't know from one batch of hay to the next exactly what you're feeding them.
Now, when my wife feeds the horses, like I said, we do the Timothy hay, and it's only a fleck and a half per horse. Excuse me. And then they get turned out into the pastures. And the pastures right now, they do have grass on it, but they're picky, choosy. They only eat this grass, they won't eat that grass, that type deal. When my wife makes me go out there, and I say makes me go out there, when my wife gives me, hey, do you mind going out there and drop food for the horses because I'm working a little bit late? I'm like, yeah, no problem. She's got like these little maybe a quart bag, Ziploc bag with maybe, I'd say, a scoop, like a half a cup of granules in it, and then that's it, and a little bit of powder for the one horse that's got the thyroid problem. But the food itself, it wouldn't even make a bowl of cereal for a child. I mean, that's how small the food is. I can't imagine that, and this is me not being a horse guy, I can't imagine that being enough food for, but they love it, enough food to satisfy the horse. I know it's all minerals, it's all vitamins and all that stuff, but they actually like hunt it down. Like they put the food in the bucket. I want to eat those, half a cup of pellets.
Well, if I threw two Oreos out in front of you, they'd be gone real quick too. But
they would.
I don't know her exact feed program, but she's doing it for vitamin mineral content, and they don't necessarily need a lot. And horses, as I've gotten a little further down the road in this, I was going to say older, but we're not older.
No,
we're still 8 and 9 years old. But horses don't need a lot of sugars, especially as they age. There has been a thing many years ago, back when I was on this. We fed sweet feed, had a lot of molasses in it. You could cover up anything in molasses, you could feed it to them. They'd eat it. Boy, it tasted good. It's kind of like, cheesecake. How much cheesecake can you stand eating? And you're only going to eat one more bite and one more bite and one more bite and one more bite. No one knows what happens there. But, keeping their sugar in check and keeping their weight in check is no different than us, So that needs to be monitored, because I don't want that call. Oh my God, my horse just foundered, because usually those things are kind of creeping up on you for a long time, and we don't look, and all of a sudden it's not a problem until it's a problem. It could be prevented. I'm not going to say all of them, but an awful lot of these cases could be prevented, and I would rather not work on them.
All right, guys, stick around. When we come back, we're going to take a short little break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into a little bit more of a healthy weight for horses. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. He'll be right back. Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein, the official 2017 American Eventing Championship farrier as well. And make sure, if you have any questions or anything out there for him, go to equinedynamics.com, and in the subject line, put podcast so Mike can decipher between all his other emails that he gets, and we'll answer your question right here on the show. And don't forget, for every podcast we do, we have a matching video, and you can check that out over at YouTube. Mike Stein, Equine Dynamics. And make sure you like him and follow him on Facebook. Mike, I've seen you posting a lot of stuff about interesting articles about horses and caring of horses and all the stuff that we talk about here in a little bit more depth. And make sure you follow him over on Facebook as well. And over to my far right side is Mike Stein.
Good morning, Travis.
You doing okay over there?
I'm doing good.
Are you getting hungry with all the feed talk and everything that we got going on?
Oh, I'm always hungry.
Now, we're going to continue the conversation about a healthy weight for a horse. And this article that your wife gave me here talks about having, make sure you're taking pictures of the horse on a regular basis and then comparing them, like 1 month at a time. Also, check the oral sugar challenge tests and other levels. Refrain from overfeeding your horse, especially restrict or eliminate pasture turnout during periods of high sugar accumulation in the grass. So you don't think of horses as having to watch their weight, other than the little pasture lawn ornaments that we have out there as far as controlling their weight. And you would think that horses will eat until they're done or they're satisfied, or they like dogs. They will just eat and actually not process. And on that note, I actually was talking to a guy, this is many years ago, when we got into up here to North Carolina. He compared the horse as an inefficient fuel generator as to compared to like cattle. Like horses eat, they don't maintain the nutrients and stuff and poop it out. As to where cows or cattle will actually eat grass and produce an actual product. That's what he said to me, and that's what stuck in my mind. I don't know the difference between the two.
Well, you can't put a horse on the grill, or most people don't anyway.
No, but they're saying that the horses, they eat, but the process of them eating is not for How did he describe it?
Well, their system is totally different as far as them utilizing feed.
Yes, I think they're not utilizing the feed 100% of what they're putting in their body. They're not getting 100% out of it, as to where a cattle or something of that nature is getting almost 100% out of whatever they put into their body.
Right, and as far as cows, goats, and the other ruminants, I do not have a whole lot of knowledge or any there, but they do process food differently. And one of the things we're talking about, we're getting into body scoring.
Okay.
And looking at the signs your horse is getting too fat, the crest on the neck, fat pockets behind the shoulders. Check your ribs, lower back. As the horse got lumps on the dock of the tail. As your horse got a trench down the middle of the back that water stands in.
Now, these are all body condition scorings that to let you know that if you've got a fat or an overweight horse, just without, if you're not familiar with, laying your hand on the horse and taking pictures all the time, these are the areas and spots that you're supposed to be looking for.
Right, exactly. And, weight tapes are easy enough to get. If you really can't afford a weight tape, figure out where they do it and tie you a knot in a hay string on a good weight for your horse. Some of the vet clinics will weigh your horses when they come in and give you probably a more accurate than the weight tape. But I tell you the truth, if somebody knows how to use the weight tape correctly and they're consistent with it, I don't know that you have to be completely accurate to the pound, but they're actually figured out pretty good on getting you in a good ballpark. Even if your numbers aren't right, as far as the exact weight of the horse, are you monitoring the size change? Because, when you have to start letting your girth out and letting your girth out and letting your girth out.
Kind of like my belt.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And then you have to go get a bigger one. And, on a matured horse, you start, what's going on here? And people, oh my God, I want a big horse. That's kind of a thing. And the other thing is when you go out to the barn, your horse, you're feeding it treats, his ears are up. Look how my horse loves me. He's happy to see me. He's happy that you're a great big giant Pez dispenser.
Right. We give our horse the little Starlight mints, the little peppermints and stuff, and she eats them right up. She knows exactly where they are. She always goes right to your pocket, and we're like, no, we don't have any treats in there.
And you think your horse is coming to you like that because your horse loves you. It loves the treats.
Right. It smells the treats too. So what else should we be looking for as far as keeping a healthy weight on a horse?
Well, like I say, you can look up plenty of places, your body scoring charts. And, I've had people say, well, on a 1 to 10, horses should be all a 10. Well, you don't want them working for Goodyear. I'd say a little bit of weight. According to Dr. Mansman, they should run about a 6 on the scale. And, when you really start scoring horses, there's a big discrepancy over how this person will score it or this person will score it. And so it's not a bad idea when your vet is out there to have your vet take a look at your horse and make a call. And I've had people that would fire vets over that. I had a woman that I worked for that every time the horse said, look at my horse, tell me what you think. Oh, your horse is too fat. She just fired and get another vet because she didn't want anybody to tell her horses were too fat. And the sad thing is there had been several of them that ended up going down the road of laminitis that did not have to.
I know sometimes when we're driving out here, we have a lot of horse farms. We have a lot of chicken farms out here where we live at. And my wife will drive by, or as we're driving by, she'll look over and she'll see a couple horses. And look at the we call them ponies, pom-poms. And she'll see a couple ribs, 2 or 3 ribs exposed on maybe one horse. And she's like, oh, I feel bad for that horse, not knowing if, is that bad to have the ribs showing on the side of the horse?
Well, some of it's the age of the horse also. Some of these older horses, weight sags down. They'll show a little rib, but they'll be carrying plenty of weight. So that is not always an indicator. Some of it's age and fitness level of the horse. If you ever look at Stallion Pictures, and this was another one of those Dr. Mansman deals. He said, if you notice, they got all these stallions in beautiful mowed lawns, and everybody loves the picture of the horse out in the beautiful lush field. It might kill him, but it's a beautiful picture of the beautiful lush field, hey, grass up to their knees. And I know down in New Zealand, even with wild horses, people say wild horses don't founder. Well, in the wetlands down there where they get a lot of grass, there are definitely signs of laminitis in the wild horses, where your desert horses, you may not see that. So it happens. And, with the stallions, beautiful manicured lawn, grass about 6 inches tall, beautifully manicured. You got your stallion out there in front of your big, beautiful barn, and he's gorgeous, and you can't see his feet. Why did they do that?
I don't know.
Well, they lost Secretariat to laminitis.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. He was lost to laminitis, and there's been a number of stallions that, when they're covering a lot of mares, they end up with a lot of food thrown to them because they're working off a lot of calories. But it's like Doc said, they're hiding look at them. They're beautiful horse, beautiful picture, beautiful grass. Did you never see them put them on blacktop where you can see what their feet look like?
Now, are we as humans the reason why? Because you said the horses out in the wild and stuff don't founder. Are we as humans the most of the cause for the horses to founder?
Well, a lot of it can be monitored better. And as far as the wild horses, there are horses in certain conditions where they do have laminitis showing up in the wild population. It's just we don't, we've got this image of the wild horses and what is the perfect image of the wild horse. And it's an image, because some of those feet are not that good. Some of them are a huge mess. I've had horses that I've dealt with where the feet were nothing like the dream of the perfect wild horse's foot at all. And there are some ugly feet that come out of the wild, and they're different. If you look at the horses out on the Outer Banks, you've got horses' feet that that they're on the sand all the time. They're splayed out all over the place.
And how do they survive? I guess is my main confusion. I mean, here we are, we're spending all this money on shoeing the horses and cutting the feet and doing all the stuff and poking the saddle right and making sure everything's good and we're feeding the horses right. But yet we still have horses that are out there in the wild. You don't see them like washing up on shore like the horses out in the Outer Banks. You don't see or hear about them dying left and right or because they're having complications with their feet. How are they surviving out there without a Mike Stein out there shoeing their feet and all that?
Normally the ones that have complications with the feet, they don't keep up with the herd very long, and they become food for something.
So it is a common practice for the horse, because it'll just, I guess, of course, like anything in nature, would just fall to the ground and then let nature take its course.
Nature takes its course. Now, you also got to look at what is the average age of a wild horse. They don't live, from what I have been told, and this is through dealing with Doc Red, so a lot of those horses, 15 years old would be a very old horse out in the wild.
Oh, really? That young?
Mm-hmm. They have a very different lifestyle. Now, in comparison to our domestic horses, they're very hardy horses, and our domestic horses wouldn't last out there because they're not the same animal. We've through our breeding and practice and everything else, there's a lot more, having them and looking at what they can eat, how their feet are, everything else. They're different from domestic horses. And we have done all the selective breeding. With selective breeding out there was, well, if you can't keep up with the herd, you don't reproduce. If you got bad feet, you can't be in the herd. Something will take you down, something will eat you, and their weight fluctuates. So they go up into the mountains in the winter, get through the winter, their weight drops off, and when the grasses come in the valley, go down there, they go into the valley's lean. They eat because nobody's going to tell them to push back from the table.
Right, exactly.
But they're also moving as their whole lives. It's not necessarily fast. They don't run everywhere they go, but foraging, which grazing and foraging is a little different. Foraging, they're hunting for food. So, the horses that are out in very sparse areas during the day, they travel more than our domestic horses do. It might be at slow pace, but they're easing along. And so with circulation and everything, that's totally different. And you can watch, going back to the body score, watching the crest on the horse's neck. And, I've talked to people many times where, this horse is too heavy. And some people will take that very personal and get upset with you over it. But, no, it's not. I like my horse big or whatever it is. And they'll not want to see that. It's like that, swimming in that great big river in denial.
Yeah. Now, is there outside of the actual weight tape, is there, remember the President's Physical Fitness that we had to do in school where they pinched right behind your elbow and told you like your body fat percentage, depending on this thing, it was a little clippy thing that went behind your elbow. Is there something that you can clip on a horse or is there any kind of tool outside of the weight tape where you can clip a small area to measure their fat content? Do they have anything like that?
Well, that goes
back to the scoring
your
thing.
Body scoring.
Okay, so it's not just one area.
And being honest about your body scoring. Horses and also you look up horses like metabolic problems. That will make a difference in how they carry weight.
So when you say the body conditioning scoring right here, it's like along the neck, section A. 1 is poor, 2 is very thin, 3 is thin, and it gives a definition behind each one. 4, moderately thin, 5, moderate, 6, a score of 6 would be moderately fleshy, 7 is fleshy, 8 is fat, and then 9 would be extremely fat. And with all the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas that you actually do on your horse, you want to get a total score anywhere. You said around 6 or something like that?
Around 6. They need a little bit of energy to burn when they need to.
And that's a conditioning body score. And this is a little chart that we have here. Somehow we'll probably, hopefully Mike will put it up on his Facebook page so everyone can see that as well. Because I've never seen this conditioning. I think this right here, if someone wants to laminate this and sell it and put it up in your barns, I think a lot more people will be more privy or more knowledgeable and more aware of, their horse getting too fat.
Right. And you can go online and you can find this. It's all over the place, but it's typically, I don't see that happening. It's not looked for, but the very skinny horse, oh my God, the horse is skinny, is starving to death. Oh my God, we got to do something about it. Oh, the horse is fat. That's okay. The very skinny horse and the very fat horse, which one is in the most danger?
Which one is in more danger?
Which one is in more danger?
Just being, relating to human, I think the fatter one would be in more danger because of the weight on the feet and the bones.
Both of them are in trouble. But we don't, he's eating. He's happy he's eating.
Mm-hmm.
And, fat horses are living dangerous. Very skinny horses are living dangerous. There are some real health problems. And you're killing a horse by starving to death. Well, we don't look at the fat horse the same way, but guess what?
It's just as bad.
It's a different way. We may be loving them to death because we love and watch. Our horse is very happy when they eat.
Right.
And, we want our horse happy and we want our horse to love us, so we keep feeding them. And, they need to be treated as an athlete. Part of our deal, they need to be treated as an athlete and managed as an athlete for longevity, even if you're, because, okay, you go out trail riding and that's all you want to do, which is great. Probably saves a lot of people from whatever, to go out on a horse and get away from the world a little bit, de-stress, decompress and all that. But if we don't manage our horses correctly, there's only so many miles they have in them for a horse to go competitive and for a horse to climb the ranks competitive. You're starting to see what it takes and how much dedication it takes to have a competitive horse and to go the long distance. And to get up in the ranks, you have to be able to go the long distance. And if we're not managing our horses, and that feed program, that is your saddle, that is what I do, bringing your vet in, is the body where it's supposed to be. That is so important on a horse to become an athlete. And a horse is a major investment, so you don't want to get a horse for your wife to do her thing on, and it's worn out in a couple of years. We got to get another horse because that's just what happens to them.
Sell and get another one.
Right. I mean, you probably can. It's no big deal to somebody like you, but to a lot of us in the world, that's a real problem, and it gets real expensive. That and everything you've got invested to get the horse to where it needs to be. Well, if you get a new horse, you start over again, and you start over again, and you start over again, and it's cheaper to be proactive than reactive. I love my friends, the vets. I don't want to buy them a new truck every year.
Right. Very good. All right, we're going to take one more little quick break and let you guys continue on about your day. Stick around. You're listening to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein. He'll be right back.
I'm good. I'm good.
All right. I want you to be happy over there.
Oh, I'm happy. I'm always happy when I'm with you.
I make life so simple sometimes, don't I? Welcome back to Equine Dynamics with Mike Stein, building and creating sounder horses from the ground up. Don't forget, Mike Stein is a registered journeyman farrier with an APF1 accreditation. And over to my far right hand side is Mike Stein.
Hello, Travis.
You said I make things better for you, your life?
Yeah. Always. I'm really understanding why your wife married you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm very flattered. And we'd like to hear from you guys as well. And the way you do that is go to equinedynamics.com. At the top of the page says contact. Any questions that you have for Mike, we'll answer it on the very next podcast. And just put in the subject line podcast so Mike can decipher between all his other emails that he gets, and we can get to your question right away. And if you want to see this video for every podcast we do, you can go to YouTube and search for Mike Stein with Equine Dynamics, and also located on Facebook as well under the same heading. And you can also send him out some questions as well. And Mike has a bunch of articles that he posts on that page as well also. All right, guys, what did we learn today? The continuing story of Dusty.
Well, we're looking at Dusty and what we went through and part of our learning curve. And, it sent me going through things I went through with my personal horses, really changed the path of what I do as a farrier, because I could get a shoe on and I could get it to stay there for at least till I got out the end of the driveway. So it must be okay. But paying attention to the horses and what they're telling us, we can avoid a lot of problems.
So Dusty was your turning point as far as learning and actual looking at the horse over.
That was a part of it. That was a part of it, because we had a problem.
Right.
And we had to figure out the problem. Then we had to, okay, why did we get the problem? Because the things, they don't just happen. They don't just happen.
Getting ready for spring or fall for the grasses in your pasture.
Be careful with your horses. Be careful with their weight. Be careful what you put on the pastures. And I understand wanting to produce some food off your property, for sure, because the price of hay and everything is so expensive.
Oh, it's like $16 a bale now.
Managing your horse as far as weight and overall caloric intake is very important, because I don't want to get the call. I don't want your vet to call me. We need to look at some x-rays, and we need to start doing something with this horse because they're getting in trouble.
And one of the best things you said to put on a pasture, not fertilizer or anything, but is lime.
Lime, if you're going to put something on them. Be careful with really cranking up your grass. I've had situations where horses have been turned out on the fields, and monitoring how long they're out there. You got to slowly wean them onto the grasses. You can't just throw them out there.
And a healthy weight for horses. A healthy weight for horses.
Right. It's just like us, what we would think would be a healthy weight and a fitness level for a horse. And, if you got a horse that is, we love them being round and full-figured, but, they're starting to lean towards some possible metabolic problems, towards laminitis, towards anything else that would be a problem with us if we were in that kind of weight scale ourselves.
Great. All right, guys, on that note, we'll let you continue on about your day. Make sure you follow Mike Stein on Facebook, YouTube, and you can email any questions to equinedynamics.com. On behalf of Mike Stein,
thank you, Travis.
My name is Travis, saying good night. See you next time.
Yep. Have a good one.
I was trying to switch because that's an end tag. I hate saying goodnight. That's an end tag I use on another one, so I was trying to say something else different. Okay. Sorry if I don't care.